Welcome back to another episode of Dudes of Divination. Today we bring you GM Spotlight, a hopeful, helpful guide to get you GMs, new or old, to just help you out a little bit. So today we're going to tackle how to make a memorable encounter, and let's figure out how. So Brandon, encounters, this is the action part of your campaign. You obviously have your narrative driven up to this point. This is supposed to be even if it's a small climax, what breaks it away from you just rolling that dice 10 times to, oh my gosh, I feel the strain of this combat. What makes that encounter memorable?
Yeah, I feel like memorable encounters are super important.
Yeah.
As someone who spends a lot of time on the DM side of the table, more so than on the player side of the table, you spend a lot of time trying to put your encounters together, and then if your players just steamroll them, that's no fun. Or if it's just like a slag where nothing's happening, nobody's really moving, and you're just, okay, go down the initiative, and that's what it is. Something that I am a big fan of is special abilities and monsters.
Definitely.
You are, even for low level stuff, because it seems like low levels are where like the memorable encounters really struggle. But if you can find a way to put some special abilities into your low level monsters, like your kobolds or your goblins or something, like let's just use goblins as an example. If you're in a cave that's densely populated by goblins, goblins are goblins. Your players are going to know what goblins are. They're going to know what to expect. Goblins are going to have daggers. Goblins are going to have short bows. That's generally what they're going to encounter, and that's just what goblins are, and that's fine. And even going further than that, when you're in that goblin cave, you're expecting there to be a hobgoblin somewhere or a bugbear somewhere, just some kind of big bruiser, because that's usually what goblins have as their boss.
And they almost need it.
Yeah.
Like they need, you don't want to give your players all of the same just because, again, that's just boring.
Exactly.
Just having that, even if it's like, to your point, special abilities, like maybe the goblin archers are, they don't have short bows, they have long bows or something. Even just varying it up.
Varying something like that. I remember that I had run a game a few years back where they encountered bugbears, which the stat block for the bugbear gave the bugbear a morning star.
Sure.
A morning star and a shield. So they were used to, because everybody's fought bugbears before, they were used to, alright, well, so this bugbear is going to swing for probably a d8 plus 3 or whatever it might be. I give those bugbears great axes. So when those bugbears came swinging, they were dropping people, and that was a memorable encounter, and it was memorable to the point where they even would talk about it 3-4 levels down the road. When they would find a hard encounter, they would make jokes like, well, does he have a great axe? And it made for a good time. And it was something so simple, just giving them 2 less AC, like taking away their wooden shield and upping their damage die, just to make it a little bit more challenging of an encounter. They're not a bag of hit points or anything, but it was a more challenging encounter. Not necessarily even changing the creature type. If you're in that goblin cave and there isn't a bugbear that's leading them or a hobgoblin that's leading them, and it's just a goblin who, just for whatever reason, has ascended the ranks, give him a little minor magic item that he can do a 15-foot burning hands with it or something, and
something small to get them over the edge, or even give them like a goblin shaman or like some sort of spellcaster that can really push, get that low level encounter something, a punch. Because that's the thing about low levels, especially in 5e, they're the only levels that really see death kind of in 5e.
Yeah,
because
5e, it's pretty impossible to die once you get up over like level 3.
Yeah. So by giving them magic at low levels, a level 2 Goblin Shaman, it's not a playable class or playable feature.
Right.
So really, those spells can be whatever you want. And, I mean, that will make a memorable encounter. If your Goblin Shaman all of a sudden, like, sprouts mushrooms and throws them at you and does, like, D6 damage, yeah, it's not crazy damage, I mean, maybe at level 1, but it's weird and it's cool and it's new and just something to expand the world outside of what the players know. Just makes it for a memorable.
Yeah, and that's another thing. Like it's easy to modify the low level encounters. Like just something as simple as changing a weapon makes it a whole different encounter. When you get up into the higher level encounters, it's more difficult because it requires a lot more, like paging through the book, maybe giving them magic items, multi-classing your enemies, something like that. But it doesn't necessarily have to be that. You can have a wizard, like, as a campaign-ending boss. Generally, you have some type of spellcaster.
Sure.
But your mushrooms thing just gave me the idea. Like, you can have a wizard who your party's going to fight him at level 12, and instead of him, like, throwing fireballs, he could be, like a bender of some kind and throw like ice storms or something. You don't need to change the actual spell, like just treat it as the fireball spell, give it a different like flavor speech to paint a different picture for your players. It's a really easy thing that they're going to be like, oh wow, what spell was that? And you can even give the spell a different name and say that it's a spell that he made, but you're just using the fireball block as a basis for it. That's another way that I like to make encounters memorable. Just throw the unexpected at them. Like you expect a high-level wizard to throw a fireball at you, so you might cast resistance fire or something, and he comes at you with a acid explosion or something.
Or like a boulder smash, or, just a different element that they don't necessarily
something
expect.
That's going to make the people at your table look at each other and say, oh, wow.
What spell is that?
Yeah.
And then with special abilities too, going off your idea, like your wizard, any kind of higher level enemy, more or less might have heard of you. So especially if your party starts doing the same thing over and over again, maybe when they go in and they're used to, all right, we're gonna put all our immunities on, immunity to fire, immunity to this, and then the people in there are like, oh well, we do this kind of damage instead. Mm-hmm. Just make them realize that other people are noticing their actions other than just the allied NPCs. If an enemy gets thwarted enough times, they're sending their underlings. Right. When they come to battle, they're going to know who you are.
And any smart enemy, any like big boss level enemy past level 8 is probably going to have some type of scrying ability.
Right.
So your boss is going to know more about the PCs than they're going to know about him or her. So the antagonist can take advantage of that if they have like one tactic that they're using that is effective against all of the minions. It probably shouldn't be effective against the main guy, or less effective. Maybe not entirely ineffective. Yeah, but less of like he should do everything that he can to prepare his best defenses for what they're throwing at him. Like obviously, as a DM, it's not your job to kill your players or frustrate your players even.
Right.
But it is fun almost to
throw them something they're not expecting.
Yeah, I don't want to say frustrate because it's not the right word, but when they have like a working combo, just throw a little wrench in that combo so that they try to do that combo, it doesn't work, or it doesn't work as effectively, and then they're forced to think on the fly and come up with new ways to do things.
Right. What if like you said, the wizard doesn't throw a fireball? What if he throws, he knows who the spellcaster is, and he throws a nullified magic zone on him. Well, now that magic user has to move away, and maybe when he moves away there's something waiting for him. Yeah. Just to get them like you said, to break up that combo and to give them something that they don't expect. Because, I mean, when you play, sometimes combats, they become the same thing over and over. And even when you don't really, you as a GM, you don't think they are, but as a player, it can be like, okay, so we break it down here. The fighter, he's going to go tank this. The rogue's going to sneak around and kill this guy, and then the mage is going to wipe up everyone else. So if you can kind of stop it to where, oh, well, the fighter can't go tank this guy because he's flying and he's, getting around behind everyone and doing stuff.
I mean, regardless of, like, creature types, mooks are mooks, no matter how you slice it. Like, big meat bags with big clubs are just they always have the same tactics. Like, they're gonna go in, they're gonna absorb damage, they're gonna deal damage, and they're gonna die. And that's where combat can become
stale.
Yeah. And just not maybe not as fun as it could be.
Right. So that was special abilities, which, to be fair, special abilities is a huge part about making an encounter fun, because D&D, we are in your imagination as a GM.
Yeah, and it's fun even like as in a GM standpoint, it's fun.
Yeah.
Because you get to do some customization for some things, and it's more fun for me as a GM, I know, to be able to do things other than I roll for attack, I roll for damage.
Right. Yeah, maybe one of your encounters, the bad guy doesn't attack. All he does is he reads a book, and by him reading the book, like, he's having other things, like, the environment around him is doing things. Which kind of brings us to our next thing, which is setting the scene. So not everything about your combat needs to be a combat. The idea of, when you think of, like, Peter Pan and he's going to fight Captain Hook, the iconic him slashing the sail and riding it down on his dagger, he's not fighting anyone, but he's setting the scene to where it's very memorable. I recall a game when Brandon was running just not too long ago. We were playing Iron Gods, and we came to this statuette-looking thing, which just had these weird iron things, like, stapled to its body almost, and it sprung to life as one person came up to just, like, inspect it, and it was a gargoyle, but he set the scene to where, like, it looked like it was part of this altar, and then the altar sprung to life. Like, you just didn't really know what to expect. It was just very, it's obviously very recent, but also very memorable just by the way it was described. It was just a gargoyle, as Brandon let us know, but the fact that it had a personality other than just monster A attacks you.
And it was strange. It looked different.
Very much different.
It looked like it was made of metal. He was like an acolyte to some evil technological deity, or so. Iron Gods is a very technological adventure if you're not familiar with it. But he was a follower of like a deity of technology or something, and did everything that he could to make himself in that image. And it was just a regular gargoyle. It didn't have any special abilities. It was just in an odd scene. And even after the combat, everybody was like, what the hell was that?
Yeah.
It was just a gargoyle, but it looked cool, and the description of it made it a memorable thing.
Right, and, like, even if, let's say you have, you're fighting, rather than just have your PCs fight on, like, a ship, maybe your seafaring thing is two ships next to each other, and they have to jump from ship to ship, and maybe one person has to spend some turns turning their ship around to come back to get those other PCs. And if they don't pass those skill checks, maybe it takes them a little longer, and then they're stranded. Obviously you don't want to cut off completely, maybe just hinder a little bit here and there. But things like that could
things to break up initiative.
Right. Yeah.
Like where if maybe you're on a moving ground, and sometimes, or you're on like a collapsing platform, and sometimes you need to spend your turn to move on to a safe place, or you're going to plummet 300 feet to the ground.
Might hurt.
Yeah, just things other than your standard action, move action, can really help to keep combat fresh and keep the players on their toes and help out with those harder combats where you're fighting 3 ogres that just have clubs. There's really not too much exciting about that, but it's a necessary like wear down encounter. You can add environmental things like that to help out.
Yeah, and I mean maybe those, to the effect that, without beating a dead horse here, maybe, there are 3 different elements of ogres, and like they imbue, the elements around them. So give them just more character. As I've been told in various times when I was a DM, every time we would start a new campaign, all right, so our first adventure, we're going to find some goblins. And of course, what did I have on my sheet? Goblins!
Yeah.
Oh, darn.
Yeah, it's a necessary part of any role-playing game is the goblin slaying. But it doesn't have to just be these 3 goblins hide in the bushes and shoot you, while these 3 goblins have shields and short swords and stab you. There's a lot of other things that you can do to where you'll probably still get the groans from players of, we're going to fight some goblins. But that's the opportunity to have them be something special that the players are like, oh, I did not expect that fighting goblins.
Yeah, maybe rather than the goblins being just the dumb, scared goblins that they're used to that just use pack tactics, maybe like they set a trap and they have like 3 goblins out in the open shooting at you, and then out of nowhere some swing in and like drag one of your PCs off to another area, because obviously goblins, we're talking about their low-level encounters. Your level 1, your level 2 PC might not be able to withstand being dragged off by himself, and maybe that ranger or that wizard who's, in the back firing over the top, all of a sudden is in a clearing by himself, surrounded by 3 goblins, out of nowhere, and the rest of your party doesn't realize where they went. It can definitely lead to a memorable encounter.
Something that I'm a big fan of also is taking a small monster like that you would see at level 1 or 2 and in giving it class levels and inserting it later into the game. I ran Rise of the Runelords in Pathfinder recently. I have a lot more Pathfinder experience, if you haven't noticed that by previous videos. I talk about Pathfinder a lot. But I ran Rise of the Runelords for the 2nd or maybe 3rd time recently, and there's an encounter in that I love. You're fighting stone giants, and when you get to the stone giants, all of the stone giant tribes are together, and you can see them from these hills. And there's a big circle that like the stone giant king lives in, and there's all these tribes, and there's giants, stone giants, hill giants, ogres. He's called all the tribes together. So it is just suicide to say, all right, well, here we go. Let's roll initiative, because you would literally fight hundreds of giant kin. So you have to find a way around. Long story short, you go up through the bottom of the camp, like in a mountainside or something. But in those caves under the camp, there is a single kobold. It's the first thing that you find. And this kobold is just decked out. She's, I think, a 13th or 14th level barbarian. So she screams when she sees you, and you think that she's scared and going to run away. But she screams, she enters rage, and if the rage isn't good enough, she has a necklace of fireballs. So when she gets you clustered, she pulls off one of these fireball beads and throws it and hits you for 66 of fire damage. It's just a great encounter, because everybody is like, oh, what's this kobold doing here? They expect it to run away, like lead them into a trap or something, but when she charges them, this little tiny 2.5 foot tall kobold taking on a party of, they're adventurers by then, they're level 10 or 11. That's one of my favorite encounters that I can think of all time.
Right, yeah, just adding something special, whether it be to adding to a character, like you said, or just changing the scenery, just really makes those encounters more memorable. So we gave you a couple things to kind of mull over, and obviously, there's a whole bunch more that we could talk about. And we'd like to hear what you think. Maybe let us know down below and tell us how you make your encounters memorable. And we'll tackle another issue on another episode of GM Spotlight. If you like the video, give it a thumbs up. If you want to see some more Dudes of Divination, which why wouldn't you? Subscribe.
You gotta scroll down to leave a comment anyway. You might as well subscribe.
See?
While you're down there.
I mean... so as always, we'll see you at the table.
This table.